Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Thanks to TriBooth, the best vocal booth for home or on-the-road voice recording. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO Stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, learner!
Here we go.
And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. Thanks to TriBooth. Don't forget the code TRIPAP200. That'll get you $200 off your TriBooth. Also, Austrian Audio, making passion heard. And of course, Centrance and the Pro Audio Suite with our new interface called the Passport VO. Speaking of which, the Passport VO does have...
Before we go on, we should let the cat out of the bag that Robert's actually sitting at the chef's table at his local 5-star restaurant recording this because there's a kitchen's going on in the background.
I think he's got a bit of slave labour going.
Would you like me to turn the fan on? I mean, it would be safer if we had the fan on in case there's a grease.
Can I just say I am not cleaning this one up, so I apologise for Robert's audio in advance.
Well, while we're doing the opening show tag, don't forget, or the plugs, that we also have georgethe.tech/TPAS for the landing page where we will have specials for you guys to check out.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if I had the Rode app for the mic, I could turn the gate on, but I'm not sure I've downloaded the Rode app for this thing. So
all right, don't worry about it. We'll live with it.
As I was saying, the Passport VO does have one feature which was part of the whole deal of this, which is mix minus. But if you're like me, you have no idea what mix. Well, I kind of do know what mix minus is.
Well, you can't add, so how could you possibly subtract?
That's right, exactly.
Exactly. But we do have a guest who was on last week, Memo, who we made a demo for. He did actually have a question. The question is about mix minus. What is your question, Memo?
Well, actually, I don't know about the minus or the mix, but I just need something to show the client what I've just recorded. And it's always a problem for me. So any guidance or help will be greatly appreciated.
The Centrance Passport VO.
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean, when it arrives...
That's why he got his free demo, because he ordered one. So there you go. His problem will soon be solved. But in the meantime, what's he do?
Tell us again, Memo. What are you recording on? What's your hardware?
Okay, I'm recording on a 416 that goes to an Apollo Solo, and then I record to Pro Tools.
Okay.
And it's always been a problem. I mean, sometimes I do putting the headphones on near the mic so they can hear, and that's what I've been doing. But of course, I know there's a better way to do it. It's just that I don't know about it.
We've got two unique perspectives here. I mean, you have two ways. You have two primary ways because you have two different ways to route audio. You have the hardware console, which is the Apollo, and you have the software console, which is Pro Tools. So, and I know Robert knows the Pro Tools side very intimately and knows the Apollo pretty well too. And I know the Apollo side very intimately, so we could probably answer this from two different directions.
I'll be happy to hear about them.
Let's first discuss the general concept, which is what is the minus in a mix minus, and the minus in a mix minus is your clients. You are sending them a mix of everything you want them to hear, minus your clients, so that they don't hear themselves back at themselves, and it's a way of preventing an echo, essentially.
Or feedback.
And
that I understand.
So there's a couple ways to do it. You can do it within a mixing console, or the way the Passport VO does it is actually just by presenting two separate audio interfaces. So one is for your recording and the other one is for your clients. So the recording interface plays back to the clients, and the output of the client interface never goes back to the clients. So that's one approach, which is the Passport VO, which is sort of has a number of advantages, and it's very simple. But two interfaces, one for recording, one for playback. Patch the output of the recording one into the playback, and or sorry, I shouldn't say that. One for recording and the other one to connect with your clients, and you patch the output of the recording interface, or the Passport VO does this for you automatically. Goes into the client's side interface, so they hear playback from the recorder. But George,
But how do you connect it? I mean, I connect my mic to the Passport, but then do I have to connect an extra XLR or
it's just all inside. So basically, the microphone goes into the recording interface, and it also goes into the client interface. So they hear you when you're recording because it goes into the client interface, and your recorder hears it because it's going into the recording interface, and then the Passport passes the output of the recording also into the client interface so that they can hear playback from your recorder.
So if I'm in Pro Tools, if I play what I recorded, they will hear it?
Well, it depends on what the thing that they are using is. So is this scenario for you mostly coming up when you're doing a phone patch type thing, like a Zoom or some kind of online meeting?
A Source Connect,
Interesting.
mostly.
So there are scenarios where you are on a Source Connect session as the actor, the talent, and you have to play something back. Is this coming up for you often?
Yes. Not that often, but once in a while.
That's fascinating.
And when it
that's weird.
happens, is there an engineer on the line, or are they asking you to record everything and then after the fact they say send us all the files?
Yeah, no, there's not an engineer. I mean, usually when you are connected to another studio, they will be recording on their side and they will be the ones playing back. But when you are by yourself, that's when things get complicated and you tell them that you are recording, but then suddenly they don't remember how the take, if it was good or not, so they ask you to play it back.
But if you're doing this on Source Connect, who is the other person you're connecting to?
Yeah, that's my question too. Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, that will be a phone
okay.
patch. Yes, if it's only the client, it will be a phone patch. Yes.
It rubs me the wrong way, and I think a lot of us feel this way, engineers, that
Yes.
that it would be expected of an actor to essentially engineer themselves while running a Source Connect session to another studio. The whole point.
Because it's kind of against the point of a Source Connect.
Exactly. The whole point is you want
Exactly.
a studio engineer at the other end to do that. So that out of the way. So yeah, so you might be, so when you're doing a phone patch, which we use sort of like as a way of describing anytime you're connected to a client, on a
We should call it a consumer
patch. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
So
yeah.
for that phone patch, what are you typically using on your end, Memo? Are you using actually a phone or are you using other software?
Cup and string.
Sometimes I use a phone, my iPhone, and just connect that thing, not the wireless ones, but the ones that you connect to the phone, the headphones,
the earpods.
the white cable ones. Yes, I use that, and I think one time I used Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom, and they were hearing me through Zoom.
Well, the two would certainly be done differently. So this is what's interesting. So when you're dealing with the Passport, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to plug your iPhone into one of the two USB ports. So your phone is now patched directly to the Passport, and the other port will go to your Mac for Pro Tools.
This is the beauty of the Passport, is it has two separate USB interfaces, like separate plugs. So you can literally use two separate devices, or you can use sort of two devices on the same computer, and it will still effectively do the same thing.
Yeah. So you'll really like that. But in the meantime,
Whoa.
in the meantime, so the problem for you really is having it's the challenge these days, of course, is that there are so many ways that clients will choose to connect to a talent. In some cases, talent chooses how to connect to the client. So it's sometimes you don't know. But if you could decide, Memo, what would your first choice be? Using your iPhone?
Yes, that's the simplest one.
yeah.
So yes.
So it's tough to do an iPhone mix minus without additional equipment, of course, right? But and the Apollo Solo's biggest weakness is that it doesn't have auxiliary sends or outputs. So you can't create a separate special mix that sends audio from the Apollo Solo directly into your phone.
The Apollo Solo or the Aero?
They're the same now. They're actually essentially identical. They just renamed the Aero and called it the Solo. They're the same thing now. But it doesn't have line outputs. So if you were on the Apollo Twin, that has a separate line output, and that would allow you to send audio from the Twin through a series of adapters, special adapters, and you'd be able to feed that into your phone and receive that back into the Apollo. That you would be able to do.
I have a Twin that I don't use anymore because I travel with a Solo. It's simpler. But if you're telling me that I need several adapters to make that work, then I'll wait for the Passport.
Yeah.
Well, can't you do it? Can't you do the same thing where you make the aux, the internal aux, the microphone input, and therefore you can aux over like that trick that you use in the
if you're
Apollo.
not using the phone. Yeah, if he's not trying to.
Right. If you're on Zoom, if you're inside the same
Zoom
computer, yeah.
or
If
some other
you're on the phone,
phone
if you're on the phone, you have a spaghetti
Right.
of cables to deal with.
Yeah, there are
Generally.
adapters that will plug Lightning into the iPhone, and then from the Lightning headset adapter, which is like an $8 adapter, right? It's just a little white dongle, little tail that plugs in, and then that gives you back the headset jack that Steve Jobs took away. Was it Steve? I'm blaming Steve.
No, it's
He's
up
dead.
to
He
him,
can't
I think.
defend
Yeah,
himself.
yeah, cool. Not
But
him, no.
when the headset jack went away, we lost that. So they have an $8 adapter that does that. Then once you have a headphone output input jack, you can now split that out and connect it to your other stuff, your mixer or whatever. And for that, there's a thing called the iRig made by IK Multimedia. It's a little box that just gives you the...
I have it as well,
so
yes.
you can make that work too, right? But the Apollo Solo is lacking that dedicated line out for that purpose. The Twin could do that, and I have rigged that up for quite a few people that want to use their phone, their actual iPhone, for that function.
But it's still not as elegant as the Passport.
It's not as elegant, definitely, but I'm just thinking, what could he do in the meantime? Because he's got a little ways to wait for the.
Yeah.
It's a bit like me, ugly but effective.
I know.
Yes.
Now that you mentioned the Passport, where would I have it? I mean, inside the booth or outside the booth or what?
How long are your USB cables? Would be the answer.
Actually, the answer
wherever you
is
want.
where do you want the user interface? Like, if you want to be able to mute microphone, control headphone levels, control mic gain, et cetera, you definitely want it in the booth. Like, that's where it's going to
And
live.
then I just need a big cable that connects the Passport to my computer.
You will need a
USB
Well, you need two
extender.
cables. You need two cables. One goes from the Passport record side to your computer, and the other one goes from the Passport client side to your phone.
Oh,
This is
okay.
I'm glad you're bringing this up, Memo, because this is something we're going to have to consider and have a really solid solution for our users, right? So let's say this is your situation. Your computer's not in the booth, but you want to have the Passport in the booth, and you're going to have that connected. We will definitely have to have a way to get the right kind of USB connection to extend that from inside to outside. And that sounds straightforward, but we still need to make sure we get the right cables and test it.
Because USB does not typically like being extended.
Not very long. I mean, there are extenders that are active, so they will extend distances without any issues, but you still do have to test them out. I've run into so many scenarios where some things work and other things don't. So this is a good point. We will make sure that is part of our recommendations.
And just so you know, for example, my microphone cables, they are 20 feet long because I like to hide them. So they go from outside the booth through the lower part of the wall, so you don't see them. But if I have a cable go from outside the Whisper Room to the computer, it will be something about, I don't know, maybe 6 feet long. But it will cross apart.
A 6 foot USB wouldn't be too bad.
I have run USB some long distances using various.
I've done
methods.
like 20. Yeah, actually, like the active ones really help a lot because even the passive ones will work, and then they will choose the worst time to decide to reset or flash out and
yeah. So this is a good point because that all has to be considered. So for your setup right now, the way you are working with and in your case, is the Apollo Solo, it sounds to me like the Apollo Solo in your situation is outside the booth, right?
Yes, it is.
Actually, he has one other option because he's got an iPhone, and if he does his phone call through FaceTime,
I don't recommend it.
Then It works.
It works, but what happens is the Apple wants to turn down the levels of the output of the other things on your Mac.
Everything else.
See, here's the thing, Robert. Recording a podcast from your kitchen also works, but it's not ideal.
Yes, I have proved this. Yeah, for sure. You didn't know this is a cooking show?
Yeah, that's right.
I'll take mine medium, mate.
Yeah.
So this is a very good point. So we'll have to have a way to make that easy for you. But for those that want to use a real, actual, honest to goodness phone, having that interface is going to be the key, is being able to connect that. So that is something that makes the Passport very unique, is that ability to do so.
It's one of probably less than 5 interfaces in the world that has a dual interface.
Yeah, this is a thing that's starting to happen. I'm sitting here next to my Rodecaster Pro 2, and it does have 2 USB ports, so it can connect to 2 separate systems simultaneously. It's a much, much bigger, much more complicated piece of equipment, right? But it has that capability. But yeah, the Passport does it internally. Now, if you're going to use the Apollo Solo, you could do it, but you could not use the iPhone for phone calling. So you'd have to use another method, whether that be Google Hangouts or having the client call you on Zoom, and then Zoom can receive a phone call through a landline call. There's a lot of other kind of workarounds.
Which at that point, why bother with the phone call part of it unless that's all they have?
So many clients like to just be on the friggin' phone. Why is that?
I know.
Yeah.
It's like the warm, comfy blanket that you've had since you were 4 years old, and you still like it, and you just carry it with you everywhere. Helps you go to sleep.
Here's one I'll throw at you that I did the other day for an unnamed agency client. It was a bunch of TVCs, and I had one talent in Brisbane, had one talent here. I had creatives here in Sydney as well. And then I also had the client sitting in the airport on his phone on a phone call. So I had shit going everywhere. And if you want to talk about mix minus nightmares, there you go. There's a classic one. But
when you have this situation, when you have clients, as everyone knows, when you have one client on the phone, the other client on whatever Zoom, another person on Source Connect, each separate connection method involved needs its own separate mix minus.
That's right.
So Robbo was managing 2 or 3 simultaneous mix minuses.
That's a lot.
Can I just say thank you, Nexus?
Yeah. So this leads us to Nexus.
which is actually the other way you could accomplish this, because you've got Pro Tools. You could build the whole mix minus in Pro Tools using something like Nexus to get out of Pro Tools and into your other apps, and then that'd be the third option.
In which case, you could actually use FaceTime to make that phone call, because then you could make Source Nexus have a special driver just for your Mac system, which is what FaceTime would use.
Right, and it wouldn't put echo cancellation all over your main connection.
Right.
Yeah.
So I keep hearing, I get the emails about the Nexus, and I really don't understand what it is.
So Nexus originally started out more as an engineer's tool, and basically what the solution or the thing that it solved was that engineers had Pro Tools, and their clients needed to be on whatever other app. It was Zoom and Meet or whatever, or even Skype, and especially with Pro Tools, when you're dealing with the Pro Tools audio interfaces, the higher end ones, once Pro Tools launches and uses that interface, no other application can use that audio interface. It's completely exclusive to Pro Tools. So how do you get audio in and out of Skype while using Pro Tools at the same time? And so Nexus was essentially like a way to get sideways in and out of Pro Tools with another audio interface. And the other trick that Nexus did is it let you create what's called virtual audio interfaces. So you could have one for Skype, one for Zoom. I did this in the pandemic. I made this gigantic mix minus setup that had Skype, Zoom, Meet, you name it. It had probably a whole bunch of faders, and in theory, it was like the conference of conferences. So what Nexus lets you do is it lets you sort of create a virtual interface for each individual communications point that you want to use, Zoom, etc., and it lets you bring them in and out of Pro Tools, through the Pro Tools mixer directly. So you have complete control of the volume and what you send to who. So as an engineer, you could do things like, hey, I have the talent on Source Connect. I have all the clients on Zoom. Zoom is talking to Source Connect, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden the clients want to say a bunch of crappy stuff about the client, about the talent. So you can mute Zoom from going to the talent, and they can say, oh my God, this guy is terrible. And then say, okay, let us talk to him again. And then you open up the mic for the Zoom to go back to Source Connect and say, that was great. whatever disingenuous thing they want to say. But it was just essentially a way of cross-patching and introducing all these other communication points in and out of Pro Tools, or for that matter, any other workstation. But we've expanded what Nexus does. And in fact, the Nexus Gateway, I guess I can say it now, it's soon going to replace Source Connect now. And it's going to include video, and we're going to start to get into the territory that's traditionally Zoom, so that you don't have to have so many things happening, like separate companies and things going on at the same time. You can handle it through one company, a little more cohesive setup, essentially. So Nexus is it's not just going to have the plugin anymore. It's going to have a built-in router. So some of that routing that you would do through Pro Tools, now you can do it, just have it set up in your computer and have it static, and you don't need to have Pro Tools launched to have that mixer, because Nexus will have a router. And then we made some specific plugins which get a little bit more sort of geeky, but essentially the idea is to have one plugin that goes in Pro Tools instead of making you have a big template set up in Pro Tools. This one plugin has all these routes built into it, so you don't have to figure out what you're doing. In a sense, the original Nexus plugin was like the Lego kit that wasn't built for you, and the new one is a little bit more, here it is built.
So my question is, should I wait or should I try to set up Nexus? I mean, maybe you cannot tell me, but
I mean, my answer would be, Nexus is very easy to set up, and once it's set up, it is very easy to use. So I would say that if you need the capability, in my mind, given what you have, I think, and George, you can tell me your piece, but I think Nexus would be simpler once he has a template in Pro Tools.
That's the key. If you're going to live in Pro Tools, if you do everything every day in Pro Tools, and you want to start from a session template in Pro Tools, then it is very easy, because if it's pre-configured for you with everything where it needs to go, then it is that easy. Like you launch and you have to launch Nexus, or I can't remember, Robert, is that load?
Well, the new one's exactly what he wants, because the new one has Nexus Review, which review is exactly, think of review as playback, review the take. So for his setup, he would just launch Pro Tools, make a record track, and he could throw Nexus Review right on that record track, or if he wanted to, he could make a master fader and throw it on the master fader. And then whatever app he's using, Zoom or whatever, the input to that app would be to Nexus Chat, and the output from that app would be from Nexus Chat. And if you were asking me, I would say you'd want to use Nexus Gateway, which is sort of our version of Zoom, which in that case, you wouldn't even need to route anything, because when you launch Nexus Gateway, it'll grab to Nexus Chat and from Nexus Chat and everything for you automatically. You don't have to select them in the third-party app. It sort of knows where it wants to go if you're using all of our stuff. But it can certainly be used with any other, Meet and Zoom and Skype, et cetera. So the new one with Nexus Review, which I think you can go to our website and there's a place where you can request early access. It's going to be out in the next month. But if not, right now, officially the Nexus IO plugin, you need to build a little template within Pro Tools, which would effectively do exactly what the Nexus Review plugin does. And anybody who has Nexus will get the whole new suite of the router and the Review plugin, and of course Nexus IO, which is the version of Nexus that has been out for quite a while now, actually. So I think that's the easier way if you're comfortable with Pro Tools. Then it's because the Apollo mixer, again, you can set up a template for it and everything, but when that template gets reset or people sort of get messed up and for some reason it's not the right template, it's a real head spinner, I think.
Yeah.
Or more so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting going back to where we were ages ago, which is having a separate booth where you don't have your computer. When we're talking about Passport VO or anything for that matter, where you need to have your fingers on the faders, which we don't do because we're in the booth. So it's just the person and the microphone in there. It certainly adds another level of complexity to any of this kind of stuff, I'm thinking.
Now, I mean, a part of being a voiceover talent is to be a little bit technical.
Yeah.
You're forced to.
I know.
You're forced to. It's
I don't like it,
the little
to be
bit
honest.
is the key, right? So
I think the moment in time was 10 years ago when all the talent was like, oh, I have a setup at home and this is going to give me the leg up and I'm going to get more clients. And really the move back then should have been, I have a setup at home and it cost extra. And no talent went there.
Yeah. And do you know why, Robert? And this is my opinion. In fact, I was only talking about this last week. The problem was that particularly in this country, you couldn't tell anyone you had a home setup. Because if you were doing stuff, a lot of the stuff that we were doing was usually overseas or, you managed to massage one client. But if any of the big commercial studios knew, they wouldn't book you. So everyone was very quiet about that. And, so you didn't want to be charging for it because immediately you put a fee on your studio. They're like, you're cutting our lunch. You're never coming in here again. Right. So that was the problem. And then it kind of went from there. But also, a lot of people who did set up, particularly after COVID, may not live in the city. And you start weighing up costs, real costs. So for me to drive into a commercial studio in Melbourne, it'll take me an hour and a half to get in and an hour and a half to get out. There's 3 hours gone, plus the session, which may go over 20 minutes. So it's cost me nearly 3.5 hours at least to do a 20-minute session. And you kind of think, And
you'd have to do your laundry, right?
Correct. And theirs probably. But and that's when it becomes like, okay, so it's petrol, wear and tear on your car, time, all those kind of things. What's the value of that?
It's like you rather not charge for it because it like all that is worth more than whatever fee you could eke out of your studio, basically. Yeah, I see that.
But it did go kind of a bit differently when COVID did hit and there were people that were living down the coast here that didn't have a setup and they needed somewhere. And that's when I was getting commercial studios calling me and saying, can we hire your space for a talent to come in and do a Source Connect session? It's like, yeah, sure. And then I'd charge an appropriate fee. But that was the only time I've ever charged. No, it's more than a bottle of wine, trust me. I did have that conversation with Robbo actually and said, I feel a bit bad because I just sit here.
For some people, it'd be a cheap bottle of wine, but for you, it was probably like 10 or 20 bottles of wine?
Probably.
Yeah.
Top shelf.
Champagne Bollinger cost a fortune.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, the Bollinger.
I'll do it for a case of Coors.
Yeah. I did actually get sponsored years ago by Bollinger.
This gives me another opportunity for a shameless plug.
Go for it.
On our team at Georgia Tech, we've got a bunch of techs like Robert himself. We've got a lot of skill. And one of my guys on the team, if this might in some way be helpful or comforting, is trilingual. He's Portuguese, speaks fluent Spanish and English. And, we've been wanting to get him, out there to other, to help people that speak other languages natively, because sometimes things connect easier when spoken in someone's native language. So,
well, it helps to be able to follow the script.
Well,
exactly. Yes.
I mean, from a technical perspective, when you're being coached or technically supported, that can help. And his name's Umberto. Umberto Franco is on our team, and he also is an Apollo user as well. So he might be able to guide you in a smooth way into solving these issues via your own Apollo. So there's another possible resource for you.
We at George the Tech are all about you not needing our own engineers. We'll just teach you.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
We have both. We have technicians to set you up. We have troubleshooting people. We have our hotline, like Robert is on the hotline, where you can call in and get emergency support. And then we also are doing virtual engineers and virtual producers, where you can hire somebody to just run the session, so you don't have to.
Oh,
do it.
very cool.
So
Well, that's a
we're
good
trying
idea.
to provide lots of different types of services. So.
Because the thing is, with all this, the way it's gone, it's like trying to read a book while driving your car, and that's what people expect of
good
talent
analogy.
now.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Right, because your head's not there. Your head's
Yeah,
thinking about
exactly.
levels. I mean, think about people doing video games and where the reads are really dynamic, and now you're worried about gain, and then if you mess it up, you get that. I don't know if this happens to you, but if you mess something up, it kind of throws you mentally. Now you're thinking about that you just messed up 3 minutes ago.
You mean if you messed something up technically, like you botched the take, you lost the file, whatever. Your head's not in the game.
Yeah, now you're thinking about that. Your next take, you're not really putting the performance into it.
Right.
It's just a lot to throw at an actor.
really
I was going to say, and how would you feel if you lost the job because you're trying to do the technical side of things? If you lost the job completely because your mind's so off it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story. That's exactly what happened to me. I lost a gig with ESPN for, it was tennis, I think, that I'd won through Abrams in New York. I got booked through them to do this thing for ESPN. I came back to Australia, went to my
Because
studio.
you kept on calling it football and it was really soccer, right?
Yeah, but I didn't have ISDN, but I had Source Connect, and I said, "Can we use Source Connect?" And they said, "No, we can't. We don't allow any computers talking to our computers over the internet."
When was that?
I was gonna say, how long ago was that?
Source Connect very early
That's
on.
a long way
Like,
ago.
This is probably
Yeah.
12 years ago, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
That's why we invented the bridging systems, right? That's why.
Yeah.
There was out of here.
just to add more technicalities to it.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine trying to do a session holding a mobile phone to my one ear while I'm trying to take direction and read scripts, it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So that was a big fail.
You live in your
But it's not
right?
fair. It wasn't fair on, like
It's
really.
not fair.
No.
I mean, that's the bottom line. It's just, it's not fair.
I totally
and
agree.
it also means the product will suffer in many cases because you're just, at that point, you're just trying to pull off a session instead of having an incredibly great performance.
Yeah.
And some talent are just so into it that they're able to pull it off because they're just way into the gear anyways. And they're even some of the talent, especially the talent that are also musicians, they were there anyways with it. So some
Or also IT.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, exactly. There's just within the engineering hat, there's so many sort of different angles of that hat. Are you the computer technician? Are you the audio engineer? Are you the IT person? Because those are all three sort of what were traditionally separate jobs within the studio. And now even within the studios, Robbo can attest to this. He is the IT department. He's the tech. He's the engine. He's the audio engineer. You just like the talent have to be everything for themselves. Everything is getting like squeezed into smaller spaces. And so,
Yeah, I can kind of see. You remember Joe Cipriano? Well, you would, George, because I think you built it. But Joe Cipriano's studio he had set up in Bel Air, the one that looked like a radio studio.
Yeah. That was
it
someone-
was a radio studio.
Yeah, basically it was a radio
basically.
studio. So, and I when I went over to his place and looked at that, and I thought, oh, that's a bit odd. I wouldn't be, doing that. I'd much prefer to have a booth and all this kind of stuff. But you can kind of see with the expectations now put on talent that really that's what home studios are going to end up looking like, because you're going to have your hands on the tools while you're reading.
Well, some would say you guys already do have your hands on your tool while you're reading. Let's be honest.
I know. I knew when I said that someone was going to react. And
This is where someone needs to clean it up.
don't touch the big knob.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to TriBooth and Austrian Audio. Recorded using Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging, with tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiosuite.com.